Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francesca Graham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started. All right, Ryan, it's going to be a great episode. Today, we are going to talk about one of your very favorite things to talk about.
Ooh.
Yourself.
That's true.
F-16 pilot. And specifically, there you were. And specifically what I'd like to talk about today, as we're both coming off of and we hope all of our loyal listeners are coming off of their fantastic Thanksgiving pies and potatoes and cheese and all the good stuff.
And premiere episode of Star Chamber.
And the premiere episode of Star Chamber.
Hell of a week.
And also, I heard something about how the Chicago Bears had some time left on the clock and they didn't use it. Is that true?
Yeah, unbeknownst to the coach, who's now the ex-coach, you don't take timeouts to the next game. So that's not how it works.
Did he get fired? I didn't actually know that.
He's gone.
Oh my goodness. So today what we're going to talk about is the foundation. So the Walk the Talk Foundation. So I know we had briefly talked about it before. I think we had mentioned in episode 1 how you had founded it back in January of 2022.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned briefly that there were 2 major episodes, we'll call them, in your life that contributed to your thinking of starting the foundation. And you had mentioned one of them was that you were an IG in the Air Force, and then also that you had endured some reprisal while you were serving in, as we call it, the hallowed halls of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the leadership, what do you call it? The
leadership laboratory.
That's it.
Yeah.
So for today, I want to talk about the foundation. Why did you start it? How is it structured? What are some key initiatives? All those things. But we'll start with, why did you start the foundation?
Yeah, so of the 2 events, one we're going to talk to later. You alluded to the 2, which were, I was an inspector general before in the Air Force. We'll talk to what that is and what I did in a later episode. But the turning point for me professionally, and what the genesis of the foundation was, my experience having been a victim of reprisal, 2 in fact. It was a BOGO at the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's buy one, get one free. Reprisals. And my 2+ year journey through the system, through the avenues of redress that always purported themselves to protect me if I reported a wrong, and then hold people accountable for those who violated that law, consistently failed me at every level from ground up. That 2-year journey really was the light bulb moment for me, in essence, where I said, this can't be a Ryan Swayze-centric problem. There have got to be more people who are going through this. And as I was going through my Defense Intelligence Agency saga, I was learning more and more people were having the same issues. And it just kind of snowballed from there. It went from some of my colleagues in the agency were telling me they were having issues. Then it went to Air Force. Then when the story went national in February of 22 in the Wall Street Journal, there's a huge outpouring of people who are all saying the same thing, which is, I've had a very similar experience in how this inspector general system, how these avenues of recourse failed me time and time again. And that's the point where I said, okay, yeah, we need to, or I need to at that point, do something about this because I've got the know-how and the experience to help people who don't have either at least try and navigate this very daunting system, which is the administrative system in the military.
Ryan somewhat alluded to it. So correct me if I'm wrong. So you were overseas, you were at an embassy, I believe, and
Right.
you had some concerns about fraud, waste, and abuse and potential HIPAA violations and people just generally not doing their job.
Yeah.
And if I recall, you hadn't even made a complaint before you started getting reprised against. Can you kind of walk us
Yes.
through that a little bit?
Yeah, the end of the story first is that, I don't know, 3+ years later, when I finally got the heavily redacted report of investigations, I realized that I was the victim of reprisal well before I thought I was the victim of reprisal. There was a
Yep.
collusion at the agency to derail me even before I knew it. And essentially, what was happening is I attempted to resolve issues that you addressed. It was dereliction of duty, toxic work environment, et cetera, through the chain of command. And my immediate supervisor was completely inept in addressing it. So I went over his head to his supervisor, who worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency in DC, the headquarters. She told me she would come out and do a fact finding mission. Within the first hour, I had been removed from my follow on assignment, the first hour of that quote unquote fact finding visit.
Mm-hmm.
And in the report, it very clearly spells out how when I first contacted Miss Levitt at the Defense Intelligence Agency, she was already working with my Air Force overseers to ensure that I didn't get the follow on that I was being postured for to Berlin.
And that was because you were difficult to work with, you questioned people too much. It's crazy,
Yeah.
crazy stuff like doing your job.
The defamation began early and was very consistent. Yes.
Right. And so just kind of last thing that I want to talk about regarding your experience specifically that contributed to your starting the foundation. So the Wall Street Journal report came out in February 2022, and for everyone can find that report on our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org. And a couple months later, correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant General Barrier, who was the director of DIA at the time, he held a town hall. And in that town hall, this is for Army personnel, in that town hall, he referenced that there was just some strange Air Force officer out in some no-name, middle of nowhere outpost who was just upset that his evaluation wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, and therefore he's raising all this ruckus. Never mind the fact that you had already gathered, what, 68 something
Right.
corroborating statements,
Yes.
and you
Which he
had,
had in his
which he
hand when he
had,
made those
right,
defamatory statements. Yeah, exactly.
right. And so just kind of wrapping it up. So you were being reprised against before you had even made a complaint. You had tried to deal with it at the lowest level, all the way up to sending an email directly to General Barrier himself saying, hey, sir, we have some issues. We need some help. And you just were getting stonewalled over and over and over and defamed. Then later on to a bunch of Army people saying, yeah, it's just some Air Force person, which
Yeah.
just some whiny little Air Force guy. So you started the foundation,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And you've helped about 400 something people since you started it work through these systems, which is incredible. How is the foundation structured?
Yeah. First of all, it's not just me, it's you too, right?
Oh,
You're
me
the
too.
MVP of the team, the newest member of the team, but by far the most productive.
Oh.
But it was founded, like you said, because I came out of that DIA affair and everyone failed me at every
Mm-hmm.
level. The chain of command, my Air Force overseers, the people at the agency, the inspector general, the equal opportunity, which I went to eventually, my representative, my senator. I turned everywhere for
Hmm.
redress and got nowhere everywhere. And I said, man, what was the hardest for me, and I think for a lot of people, is that, and we can make this comparison often with the criminal process. When you're accused of a crime, you're given counsel and representation. If you're the victim of reprisal, which is career ending potentially, and was in my case, you're on your own. You get nobody.
Yep.
And I, like so many people, fought that fight alone for years, which was, of course, professionally damaging because as soon as you're outed as a whiner, as Barrier labeled me in the town hall.
Yep.
By the way, the
It,
IG found nothing wrong with that in the investigation. It's like,
yeah.
it's cool. There's no restriction of, there's no
No,
chilling effect here.
none
Not to
whatsoever.
mention a lie.
Yep. Just some Air Force. And again, you can read that transcript from Barrier's speech on our website, walkthetalkfoundation.org, because we got the redacted
We got
transcript.
the, yeah, we've
It's
got it.
right there.
Right
Some
there. All
random
stems
air.
from one officer, end quote.
Yep. There, nothing to see here, folks at DI. Everything is great.
You hear the paper shredder in the background. Well, those are witness statements.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But, okay, so my career was ruined, but it was taking a huge psychological, emotional toll on me as well.
Hmm.
And I was a former inspector general. I knew the rules, I knew the system, and I still was just getting pummeled by it. So I thought to myself, well, if I, Ryan Swayze, with the know-how I had, was crushed, surely people who are, no offense, completely ignorant on where to start even and what to do, uh, they don't even get off the blocks for a lot of these complaints probably. And you and I have seen it, Cheska, where people just kind of roll over like, I didn't even know where to start and
Hmm.
I was going to get ruined anyways, so I don't even bother. And that's the
Yep.
wrong answer because then the bad guys get away with it and the system doesn't improve. And I said, we got to start something that helps people through this. And there in turn improves the system and holds people to account, hopefully.
Right. Absolutely. So you start the foundation. We're structured. Kind of
Yeah.
three big things we're working on. What are those things?
First and foremost is the client work. So that's the bread and butter of what we do is we take people in, they need our advice, they need our counsel. It's a non-legal, there's no client attorney privileged kind of setup. We don't provide legal advice. It's all in the administrative realm. But they turn to us because they don't know where to go and what to do. That's the meat of our mission right there. And everything else builds off of that. And the other two tiers are the congressional slash cross advocacy group work that we're doing with a focus on, of course, legislation and improving the lackluster laws that are in place,
Hmm.
many of which aren't followed anyways.
Oh, you know.
Lashmas. And then the third piece, which we're really excited about, but we're just still in the exploratory phase, is civil litigation of perpetrators who aren't held accountable in this administrative system, but are still liable under a civil code, so long as we can navigate the slippery Ferries Doctrine and Westfall Act, which provides a lot of insulation, unnecessarily so, to people in the military or formerly in the military that have violated regulations, rules, and laws at someone's expense.
And we'll get into in future episodes, we'll get a little bit more in detail in this funky thing called the Ferris Doctrine and this funky thing called the Westfall Act, because
Mm,
I mean it wasn't until I started working with the foundation that I had ever heard of that before, and I had been in the military 20 plus years, which is always kind of a funny thing to me when I post articles with through our newsletter DoD Times Redacted, and I'll look at some of the comments sometimes, and there'll be someone on there say, well, these people knew what they were getting into when they joined the military. They knew what they were getting, that they were giving up their rights and this and that. And I know when I joined the military at 17 years old, I barely knew where my freaking face was, much less what the Ferris Doctrine was. I mean,
yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
come on. So we're that's kind of our three major big ways that we're structured right now. So, what are some initiatives that the foundation has already accomplished since its inception in January 2022?
So the big win right off the get-go was getting language into the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 23. So that was directly as a result of the DIA scandal. The end of the story from all that was that Barrier went to a House Intelligence Committee hearing, and Representative Spear, who was a member of the committee at the time, Jackie Spear, said, fix your agency and report back on how you're doing it. And that was really the turning point for getting some laws enacted for DIA to basically fix their shit. And
Hmm.
that was in the Intelligence Authorization Act, which is in a compendium appendix, to the NDAA for that year. So it mandated some things to fix the culture of DAA exit surveys and 360-degree feedback and leadership assessment for people going above a certain rank, et cetera. I'm sure it's not being followed at all. I'm sure it's changed nothing either. But hey, one can hope, right? That's your cue to put on the rose-colored glasses, as we
That's
already know the glass, how it sits for both of us.
I am glass half full. Ryan is glass half empty. But to your point, given my experience of that law, as I was at DI a little bit later on after that law went into effect, what I saw was that the law was actually being weaponized.
Hmm.
Uh, it was really, really, really fancy where, these exit surveys are being used by people to fire or start investigations on leadership that's still in place by people who are leaving. It's pretty
Oh,
awesome.
excellent. Okay, well, there's my legacy. Awesome.
No, no, you know what your legacy is, which is so cool? With that, at least, I think it's just absolutely fantastic that it is written in law that the Defense Intelligence Agency has toxic leaders and a toxic
Yes.
leadership culture. That is
Yes.
just from a slightly petty standpoint, that is just cut
No,
across.
that is a win.
I think
Uh,
that's
there,
so
there's
weird.
there's Scott Barry's legacy
Yeah.
enshrined in public law forever.
Yep,
So,
it's just amazing. So, so that's one of the major accomplishments. Aside from, so I mean, there's the initiative of the legislation, and that's awesome. But then I don't want to discount all the work that you have been doing, and me since June at least, have been doing to advocate for and advise people, service members currently serving and former service members, and also federal civilians, which includes, I know you've spoken before about how you've been on the phone with a service member with his wife is falling apart and crying in the background because he's being essentially kicked out of the military without any recourse.
yeah.
You've helped people work through suicidal ideations, and you've just done a tremendous amount of work. So it's not just DI has toxic leaders.
No, not at all. And in all seriousness, individual cases, the successes from those are the real wins because it's
Hmm.
helping people get their lives back in order and on track. And the double win, I think, of that is that when that happens, the word gets out. And sure, it helps us get clients and we're able to advise more people, but this is a cognitive war, so to speak. This is where you, as a victim, the more you know, the better you're armed against a system that's going to take advantage of you had you not had the know how. That's how they are able to steamroll you, they being the institution, by
Hmm.
making you forfeit rights you didn't even know you had, kind of bringing it back full circle to the beginning of the show. The more people know about what they are entitled to and what they're able to do, the better equipped they are to fight this pretty arduous fight.
And mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, financially exhausting.
True
Because
to all.
as you mentioned, especially if well, either you're a complainant or you're a subject, you're a whistleblower or you're a subject of an investigation. If you're a whistleblower, you're not provided legal counsel, even though you sure need it or you need some sort of counsel. And so that's potentially thousands of dollars. And if you're a subject of an investigation, you're theoretically provided a JAG, but who does that JAG work for?
Mm-hmm.
the
The
command.
same chain that's abusing you.
Right.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
how useful is your counsel going to be? So if you're intelligent, you'll, especially if you're going to court martial, hire a civilian lawyer, a good one. Don't wait till the end. It's not a good idea. So then what are some key initiatives underway that the foundation has going on?
Two big things right now, initiative wise, while we still maintain a lot of the stuff that you handle, Cheska, the outreach, the individual casework, the crosstalk with the other agencies, the other advocacy groups, some governmental agencies that are in this fight as well. The two things are, and we kind of alluded to one already, is the civil litigation, aka Operation Military Injustice. And that thing I'm giddy about, and I don't get giddy
That's exciting.
often, but it is exciting,
It's real
and
exciting.
I think it's really the last best hope, unless we see some massive sweeping changes in administrative law and Uniform Code of Military Justice. This is our last best hope to hold perpetrators of wrong truly accountable. But we'll get into that in a few episodes later. But the next initiative, which is the legislative side, is a report you put a lot of time and effort into, which is affectionately known as Lapdog.
So
And I
good.
love that title. It's really called, officially at least, Independent Watchdog turned Institutions Lapdog, the failure of Department of Defense and Inspector General system and its impact on recruiting, retention, and readiness.
Hmm.
It's a very long-winded title to say the DODIG purports itself to be this independent watchdog, but really we know and state as fact it acts as the institution's lapdog.
To cover up and protect the leadership. And I,
Bam.
and I've been thinking about this quite a bit. We say quite a bit that it exists to protect the institution. But I think a better way to say it is it's not existing to protect the institution. In reality, it's hurting the institution. It exists to protect the perception of the institution.
Exactly. Yeah, it's if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a great quote. It's the tighter you hold your grip on planetary systems, the more they'll slip through their fingers. And that's essentially what's happening with this overarching phenomenon in the military is as they clamp down and try and keep truth and justice and due process under wraps, it's actually leaking trust and degrading the morale of the
Mhm.
people faster than if they just were transparent about what was happening. That's the great irony of all of this is that you have this entity that thinks it's serving one purpose, which is to insulate and protect the institution, but by doing so, it's actually eroding it faster because more and more people see what's occurring, and that trust gap is just widening every day.
And why join the military if you can't trust?
There is a link.
There's very much a link. Well, that was a really good teaser for our next episode.
Ooh.
Boo. Lapdog is the unofficial name of the report. For the episode, though, because I was feeling a little froggy when I was coming up with the title, we're calling
I
it
don't know why I found that funny, but froggies, that's funny.
we're calling it bureaucratic chihuahuas. So not just a lapdog, but an angry, small, unicky little chihuahua.
The worst
The
dogs
worst.
ever.
I
Sorry.
mean, we love all dogs.
We love, especially Chihuahuas, but
Every once
as a
in a while.
lap dog, not great.
All right. Well, we really appreciate everyone tuning in, and we look forward to you tuning in for bureaucratic chihuahuas.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in and see you next episode.